I'm 91. I marched in the civil rights era, but I stayed silent at home. I'm 91 years old now, and my knees don't carry me the way they used to. My voice ain't as strong either. But there's something I've been carrying longer than these bones have been weak. I marched in the civil rights era, I stood in lines, I sang the songs, I faced dogs and batons and men who looked at me like I wasn't human. And still, I stayed silent at home. That's the part nobody clapped for. I was born in 1934 in Alabama, when the signs said colored and white like that was just the natural order of things. You learned early what door to use, what fountain not to touch. You learned to step off the sidewalk if a white person was coming, learned to lower your eyes without looking broken. My daddy was a sharecropper, sun up to sundown, bent over land he didn't own. My mama cleaned white folks' houses, came home smelling like bleach and somebody else's supper. We didn't have much, but we had the church. Sunday mornings, that was the only place a black man could stand tall. Gospel music rising up like it might lift the roof clean off. But even in church there were things we didn't say. You didn't talk about fear. You didn't talk about humiliation. You didn't talk about how it felt to watch your father step aside for a boy half his age just because that boy was white. You swallowed it. By the time I was a teenager, I knew two things. One, this world wasn't built for me. Two, I was going to survive it anyway. In 1955, when Emmett Till's face showed up in that casket, I was 21. I remember staring at that newspaper, my hands shaking. That could have been any of us. That could have been me. Something shifted in this country then. Folks started whispering louder, started standing a little straighter. When Dr. King's voice came across the radio, it felt like thunder rolling through dry land. I moved to Birmingham not long after, found work at a steel plant, hard work, hot work, work that burned your lungs slow, but it paid. And in 1963, I marched. I marched because I was tired of stepping off sidewalks. I marched because my mama was still scrubbing floors. I marched because I wanted to vote without being asked how many jelly beans were in a jar. I remember the heat, the sweat running down my back, the sound of feet moving together. We sang "We Shall Overcome" like we believed it right then. Like freedom was just around the corner waiting for us. Then came the hoses, the dogs, the jail. I wasn't some famous name, just one more black man in a crowd. They slammed me against a wall, called me boy, like I was still 10 years old. But I didn't bow my head. Not that day. When the Civil Rights Act passed, we celebrated. We thought the door had finally cracked open. But here's the part I need to tell you. I could march in the streets. I could face down policemen and spit in hatred. But when I went home, I didn't know how to speak. I married in 1964. Her name was Lillian. Soft voice, strong hands. She'd grown up in Mississippi, cotton fields and all. We moved north to Chicago in '66, part of that great migration wave that thought the North was going to be different. It was different, but it wasn't free. Up there, the signs weren't hanging over fountains. They were hidden in bank policies, in red lines on maps, in the way landlords said the apartment was already taken, in the way supervisors looked at you like you were lucky just to sweep the floor. I worked at a factory on the south side, double shifts sometimes, wanted my children to have what I didn't, wanted them in decent schools, wanted them safe, and that's where my silence grew. I thought being a man meant carrying everything alone. I thought being strong meant never letting your voice crack. My wife would ask me what happened at work. I'd say, nothing, even when something had, even when a foreman called me out my name, even when I trained a white boy who got promoted over me the next week, even when police pulled me over for no reason but the car I was driving. I swallowed it. At home, I was strict. Too strict, if I'm honest. My son couldn't leave the house without a lecture about how to keep his hands visible. My daughter couldn't wear certain things because I was afraid of how the world would see her. I told myself I was protecting them, but I was also passing down my fear. Lillian would say, "You don't have to be hard all the time." I'd shrug her off. I'd say, "That's just how it is." She'd try to talk about how lonely she felt with me sitting right there in the same room. I didn't know how to answer that. See, in the streets I was brave. At home I was quiet. Quiet about my nightmares. Quiet about the shame I felt every time I couldn't change something. Quiet about the fact that I was tired, bone tired. There wasn't language for that back then, not for us. Black men didn't talk about pain. You prayed about it. You worked through it. You drank it away sometimes. But you didn't sit at the kitchen table and say, "I'm hurting." Years passed like that. Children grew up. Bills got paid. Promotions never quite came the way they should have. The steel plant closed in the late 70s, and I scrambled for whatever work I could find. I missed school plays, missed little league games, missed evenings sitting on the porch just talking. Because survival don't leave much room for softness. My son left home at 18, joined the military, said he needed space. I told him that was fine. Truth is, I didn't know how to talk to him man to man without sounding like a warning siren. My daughter moved out west. We talk, but there's a carefulness there, like we're both stepping around something we never named. Lillian stayed. She always stayed. Until cancer came in the early 2000s. By then, I was already in my late 60s. The world had changed some. Black mayors, black news anchors, even a black president not long after. Lillian lay in that hospital bed, thin as paper. One night she looked at me and said, "I needed more from you." That was it. Not anger, not yelling, just that sentence. I held her hand, and for the first time in my life I cried in front of somebody. But it was late. So late. She passed a week later. The house got quiet in a way I wasn't prepared for. All those years of working, marching, surviving, and I had never learned how to sit still with myself. That's when the weight of it came. I started remembering the young man I was in '63, shouting for freedom. And I asked myself why I couldn't shout for tenderness in my own home. Why I could demand dignity from a nation but couldn't offer vulnerability to the woman who loved me. It wasn't because I didn't love her. It was because I had been trained to armor up so tight that nothing got in. Not even love. Not fully. The damage wasn't loud. It was slow. It was the way my children learned not to bring me their tears. The way Lillian stopped asking certain questions. The way I convinced myself that providing money was the same as providing presence. By the time I understood that survival and living ain't the same thing, most of my living years were behind me. I watch my grandchildren now. They speak up in ways I never could. They name things we buried. They challenge teachers. They talk about therapy like it's just another appointment on the calendar. Part of me is proud. Part of me aches. Because I wonder who I might have been if I'd had that freedom. If I'd believed I was allowed to be more than strong. If I'd known that being soft didn't mean being weak. The civil rights victories came. They did. But for many of us, the habits of survival stayed long after the laws changed. I carried Jim Crow in my chest long after the signs came down. Carried it into my marriage, into my parenting, into my silence. Now I'm 91, and most of the men I marched with are gone. The ones who are left, we don't talk much about what it cost us. We talk about the glory days, the speeches, the courage. We don't talk about the homes we came back to and the walls we built inside them. There are things that can't be fixed. I can't go back and sit on that living room floor with my son and tell him I was scared too. I can't redo the nights Lillian lay next to me wanting conversation and got quiet instead. I can't reclaim the version of myself that might have laughed more, rested more, loved out loud. Time don't circle back. And old age, it's a strange place. You become invisible. Folks hold doors for you, but don't ask your story. They see wrinkles, not history. But there's history here. There's a boy who drank from a colored fountain. There's a young man who faced fire hoses. There's a husband who didn't know how to lower his guard. There's a father who thought fear was the same as guidance. If you're younger and listening to me, I'm not here to preach. I'm not here to tell you I had it harder, so you should be grateful. Every generation got its own battles. I just want you to understand something. Strength is necessary. Yes. The world can still be cruel. It can still try to strip you down to nothing. But don't let strength become your only language. Don't let survival steal your softness. Talk to your children. Tell them when you're afraid. Tell them when you're proud. Let them see you whole, not just armored. And if you love somebody, say it plain. Say it more than once. I marched so my family could have rights. I wish I had also learned how to give them my heart without condition. I don't regret marching. I don't regret standing up when it mattered. I'm proud of that young man. But I do regret thinking the fight ended at the front door. My time is short now. Doctor tells me that gentle-like. I feel it in my bones anyway. Mornings take longer, nights come quicker. I sit in this chair by the window and listen to old gospel sometimes. Mahalia Jackson, Sam Cooke before he crossed over. Those songs still carry something holy. I think about Lillian. I think about Birmingham. I think about that long road from Alabama dirt to Chicago concrete. I survived. That's true. But survival was never meant to be the whole story. If somebody hears this and holds their loved one a little closer tonight, if somebody decides to speak instead of swallow, then maybe this old man's silence won't be the last word. I'm 91 years old, and I'm finally saying what I should have said all along.